The dining room glowed with warm amber light from the chandelier my wife had insisted on buying last spring. Around our mahogany table sat the usual suspects for our monthly family dinner. My wife, her parents, her younger sister, and tonight, a special guest, the sister's new boyfriend, a man who'd arrived wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "So you work in, what was it? IT support?" the boyfriend asked, swirling his wine glass with practiced ease. His Rolex caught the light as he moved, and I noticed he'd positioned his wrist to make sure everyone saw it. "Something like that," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I handle technical operations for a mid-sized company." My wife squeezed my hand under the table. She knew exactly what I did, but we'd long ago agreed to keep things low-key. 20 years ago, I'd started my tech company in a garage with 2 friends and a dream. Now, we employed over 3,000 people across 4 countries, with annual revenue pushing $500 million. But at family dinners, I was just the quiet guy who worked with computers. "Mid-sized," the boyfriend repeated, a smirk playing at his lips. "That's sweet. Really, that's adorable." He leaned back in his chair, the picture of practiced confidence. "I'm actually about to close a major partnership deal. You've probably heard of them. TechVision Solutions? We're talking 8 figures, minimum." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. TechVision Solutions. My company. The company I'd built from nothing, brick by digital brick. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," my sister-in-law gushed, practically glowing with pride. She'd been dating this peacock for barely 3 months, but you'd think he'd hung the moon based on how she looked at him. "What's your role in the partnership?" I asked casually, cutting into my chicken. "I'm the Senior Acquisitions Director for Paramount Consulting," he announced, his chest puffing out slightly. "We broker these deals between companies and investment firms. This TechVision thing? It's going to be the crown jewel of my portfolio. The CEO there is probably some tech geek who got lucky, right place, right time, you know? But he's smart enough to recognize talent when he sees it. That's why he's working with us." My father-in-law nodded approvingly. "Sounds impressive, son. Must take quite a bit of expertise." "Oh, it does, sir. It absolutely does." The boyfriend took another sip of wine, then turned his attention back to me. "No offense, but it's a different league from, fixing computers and stuff. The corporate world, the real players, it's cutthroat. Not everyone's built for it." "None taken," I said, though my wife's grip on my hand had tightened considerably. "I mean, there's nothing wrong with a simple life," he continued, warming to his theme. The wine had clearly loosened his tongue. "Honest work, 9 to 5, home for dinner. Some people are just more ambitious than others, you know? Some of us are wired differently. Alpha personalities, they call it." My mother-in-law tittered nervously. My sister-in-law beamed at her boyfriend like he'd just delivered a TED talk. My wife's face had gone carefully blank, the expression she wore when she was furious but trying to keep the peace. "Take this TechVision deal," he pressed on, oblivious. "I've been working on it for weeks. The preliminary meeting is tomorrow, actually. Big boardroom, all the executives, the works. That's the kind of pressure that separates the men from the boys." He glanced at me with barely concealed pity. "But hey, somebody's got to keep the servers running, right? The little cogs make the machine work." Polite laughter rippled around the table. Even my father-in-law chuckled, though he had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable about it. I smiled and nodded, taking a sip of my water. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting indeed. The preliminary meeting he was talking about, I'd been copied on those emails. My assistant had scheduled it for 10 o'clock sharp in our main conference room. The one with my name on the door. "Well," I said, raising my glass slightly, "here's to ambition. And to tomorrow's meeting. May it exceed all expectations." The boyfriend clinked his glass against mine, his smile wide and condescending. "Cheers to that, buddy. Cheers to that." The alarm went off at 6:30, but I was already awake. My wife rolled over, her eyes meeting mine in the early morning dimness. "You're going to destroy him today, aren't you?" she whispered. I'm going to attend a meeting, I replied, kissing her forehead. What happens, happens. She knew better. 23 years of marriage meant she could read me like a book. He deserves it, she said finally. The way he talked to you last night. I wanted to throw my wine in his face. I know you did. I felt you shaking. I sat up, stretching. But this way is better. Trust me. In the shower, I replayed the previous evening's conversation. The casual dismissal, the barely veiled contempt, the assumption that his suit and his watch and his wine knowledge made him inherently superior. I'd met 1,000 men like him over the years, all flash, minimal substance, riding on presentation and bravado. What bothered me most wasn't his arrogance toward me. I'd built a successful company. I didn't need validation from a stranger. What bothered me was how he'd made my wife feel. How he'd turned family dinner into a performance of his supposed superiority. How my sister-in-law had sat there, absorbing his toxic worldview, thinking this was what success looked like. I dressed carefully, my usual work attire. Well-tailored charcoal suit, understated tie, Italian leather shoes that cost more than his Rolex but bore no visible branding. My father had taught me that real wealth whispers. Apparently, the boyfriend had never learned that lesson. At the office by 7:45, I reviewed the partnership proposal one final time. Paramount Consulting wanted to broker a deal connecting us with a venture capital firm for our European expansion. On paper, it looked solid. In practice, we'd been doing our due diligence, and the numbers weren't adding up. The VC firm they represented had a questionable track record, and several references had come back lukewarm at best. My CFO, Jennifer, knocked and entered. Ready for the dog and pony show. Is that what we're calling it? She grinned. After your text last night about the dinner situation? Absolutely. I've alerted the team. We're going to be professional, courteous, and absolutely brutal in our questions. I didn't ask you to be brutal. You didn't have to. He insulted our CEO. He insulted you. Same thing. She handed me a folder. Also, I did some extra digging. Your future brother-in-law? His track record is questionable. 3 deals in 2 years, and 2 of them fell apart within 6 months. The companies involved wished they'd never heard of Paramount Consulting. I flipped through the documents. Failed partnerships, broken promises, aggressive sales tactics that prioritize commission over client success. Not illegal, but deeply unethical. The picture became clearer. Should we even take this meeting? Jennifer asked. Absolutely. We scheduled it. We'll honor our commitment. I checked my watch. Besides, some lessons are best learned in person. At 9:55, my assistant buzzed. They are here. Should I show them to Conference Room A? Conference Room A. The big one. The one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, with my company's logo etched in glass, with my name on the door, founder and CEO. Give them coffee. I'll be there at 10 sharp. I spent the next 5 minutes reviewing notes I'd already memorized, letting anticipation build. Not revenge, I wasn't vindictive. But accountability. That was important. People needed to understand that kindness wasn't weakness, that humility wasn't failure, that quiet confidence beat loud arrogance every single time. At exactly 10 o'clock, I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked down the hall. Through the glass walls, I could see 4 people in the conference room. 3 I recognized from previous correspondence. The 4th sat with his back to the door, gesturing animatedly, clearly holding court. I opened the door. The room fell silent instantly. 3 faces I didn't know well turned toward me with professional smiles. The 4th face, the boyfriend's face, went from animated to confused to pale in the span of 3 seconds. Good morning, everyone, I said, moving to the head of the table. My seat. The CEO's chair. Thank you for coming. I apologize for keeping you waiting. You're the boyfriend stammered. The CEO, yes. I sat down, opening my portfolio. We haven't been formally introduced. You're the Senior Acquisitions Director from Paramount Consulting, correct? His mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The other three people from his firm exchanged confused glances. Actually, the woman to his left said slowly, I'm the Senior Director. He's an associate. We brought him because he said he had a personal connection to your company. A personal connection, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. The boyfriend had gone from pale to red. We, my girlfriend's family. Ah yes. Dinner last night was lovely. Thank you for joining us. I turned to the others. Shall we begin? I have several questions about your proposal. The senior director, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, recovered quickly from the obvious tension. Of course. We're excited to discuss how Paramount can facilitate your European expansion through our vetted capital partners. I nodded, pulling up the presentation on the conference room screen. For the next 20 minutes, they walked through their pitch. It was polished, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a consulting firm of their size. The boyfriend, I'd learned his name was Derek from the meeting agenda, said nothing, slouched in his chair, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. When they finished, I leaned back in my chair. Jennifer, could you join us? My CFO entered promptly, taking a seat beside me. She'd been watching from her office via video feed, as she often did for preliminary meetings. Thank you for the presentation, I began. I have some concerns. First, the venture capital firm you're representing, Stratton Growth Partners. Can you walk me through their track record with technology companies specifically? Patricia smiled confidently. Certainly. They've invested in over 40 tech startups in the past 5 years. And how many of those 40 are still operational? The smile faltered slightly. I'd have to check the exact. 11, Jennifer interjected smoothly. 11 out of 40. That's a 72% failure rate. For context, the industry average for VC-backed tech startups is about 60%. Patricia's composure cracked. Well, the startup world is inherently risky. Indeed it is, I agreed. Which is why we're not a startup. We're an established, profitable company with 20 years of steady growth. We don't need high-risk capital. We need strategic partners who understand our market, our values, and our long-term vision. The third member of their team, a younger man named Kevin, jumped in. With respect, sir, Stratton has deep pockets. The funding they're offering is 20% below market rate in exchange for equity stakes that would give them effective veto power over major decisions, I finished. We ran the numbers. Your deal structure would essentially let them steer our European strategy while taking minimal risk themselves. If it succeeds, they profit enormously. If it fails, we absorb the losses. Silence descended over the conference room. Derek had slumped so low in his chair he was practically sliding under the table. Patricia rallied. Mr. I apologize, I should have done more homework on who you were meeting with. I suggested gently. That does seem like basic preparation for an 8-figure deal. Derek suddenly found his voice. Look, I can explain. Please don't. I held up a hand. Patricia, Kevin, I appreciate your time today. Genuinely. You presented well, and I respect the effort. But this particular partnership isn't right for us. We'll send a formal pass by end of business today. May I ask what changed? Patricia asked. Your assistant indicated strong interest when we scheduled this meeting. Nothing changed. We always planned thorough due diligence. We've been investigating Stratton for 3 weeks. This meeting was to see if you could address our concerns. I glanced at Derek. And to confirm some character assessments. Kevin leaned forward. If I may be candid, sir, it feels like we never had a real shot here. You're right, I admitted. You didn't. But you deserved a fair hearing. And now you've had one. I stood, signaling the meeting's end. I hope you'll take the feedback constructively. The consulting industry needs firms with integrity, not just ambition. Patricia stood as well, her expression carefully neutral. "Thank you for your time. Kevin, let's go." She looked at Derek. "You can find your own way out." Derek's head snapped up. "What?" "Patricia, wait. You told us you had a personal relationship with the CEO. You said he'd already verbally committed to the deal. You said this was a sure thing." Patricia's voice was ice. "You lied to us, made us look like fools, and I suspect you've damaged our reputation with a major potential client. We'll discuss your employment status back at the office." She and Kevin left without another word. Derek remained seated, staring at the table. "You should probably follow them," I said quietly. He looked up, and for the first time, I saw something other than arrogance in his expression. Fear. Embarrassment. The dawning realization of consequences. "I didn't. I just wanted to impress her," he said finally. "Your sister-in-law. She's amazing, and I thought if I could show her I was successful, important." "So you made up a personal connection to a CEO and convinced your firm to pursue a deal based on false pretenses?" "I didn't make it up. You were at the dinner. I met you. I didn't realize." He trailed off helplessly. "You didn't realize the quiet guy who fixes computers actually ran the company," I finished. "Because you never asked. You assumed. You looked at my life, the one I chose to present, and decided it was simple, small, unambitious. You used those assumptions to feel superior." Derek stood shakily. "I'm sorry. Last night, the things I said were revealing," I interrupted. "You didn't insult me, Derek. You exposed yourself. How you view people, how you measure worth, how you treat those you perceive as beneath you." I walked to the window, looking out over the city. My sister-in-law deserves better than someone who treats service workers like props and little cogs like they're invisible. "Are you going to tell her?" I turned back to face him. "I'm going to tell my wife what happened here. What she chooses to share with her sister is between them. But Derek, if you care about her at all, you'll tell her yourself. The truth. Not a version that makes you look better." He nodded slowly, then walked to the door. He paused. "For what it's worth, this company you built. It's impressive. Really impressive." "It is," I agreed without false modesty. "But not because of the revenue or the size. It's impressive because 3,000 people trust me to lead them. Because we've built something that solves real problems for real people. Because we've stayed ethical even when it cost us short-term profit." I met his eyes. "That's what success looks like. Not a Rolex. Not a title. Doing good work with good people." After he left, Jennifer returned. "Well, that was satisfying." "Was it?" I sat down heavily. I just watched a man's career implode. He imploded his own career. You just provided the stage. She studied me. "Having regrets?" "About the meeting?" "No." "About dinner last night?" "Yes." I should have shut him down immediately instead of staying quiet. "You stayed quiet because you're kind. Because you didn't want to embarrass him in front of family." Jennifer shook her head. "That's not weakness. That's grace. He mistook it for weakness. Big difference." My phone started buzzing around 2 o'clock. First, a text from my wife. "Your sister called me. Derek showed up at her work crying. What happened?" Then my sister-in-law, directly, "We need to talk. Now." I called my wife first. "Hey. So Derek just quit or got fired, I'm not entirely clear which," she said without preamble. "And apparently it has something to do with you." I explained the morning's events, leaving nothing out. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. "Oh my God," she finally said. "He really thought he was brokering a deal with your company without knowing it was your company." "Apparently. He told his firm we were close friends, that the deal was essentially done." "But you'd never even met before last night." "Correct." Another pause. "You know my sister is going to lose her mind, right?" She was already planning their future together. Beach wedding, European honeymoon, the works. I sighed. I didn't set out to ruin their relationship. I know you didn't. But honey, that relationship was built on lies and arrogance. Better she finds out now than after the beach wedding. She sighed. Okay, I'll handle my sister. You focus on not feeling guilty. I'll do my best. And babe? That thing you do, where you stay quiet and humble and let people underestimate you. I love that about you. But sometimes I wish you'd flex just a little. Show people who you really are. I show you who I really am. That's what matters. Damn right it is. Love you. Good luck with whatever's coming next. Whatever was coming next arrived at 3:30 in the form of my sister-in-law bursting into our building's lobby. Security called up, and I told them to let her through. By the time she reached my office, she'd worked herself into a full rage. You ruined his life, she shouted, not even bothering with hello. He told me everything. You set him up, you humiliated him, you got him fired. Hello to you too, I said calmly. Would you like to sit down? No, I don't want to sit down. Derek is devastated. His career is destroyed. And for what? Because of your ego. I considered my response carefully. Did Derek tell you what he said at dinner last night? He said you were talking about work. He called me a little cog. He said I wasn't built for the corporate world, because I wasn't ambitious enough. He mocked my career, my choices, and by extension, your sister's judgment in marrying me. And everyone at that table laughed. My sister-in-law's momentum faltered. He was just trying to impress me. By putting someone else down? By lying about his professional relationships? By convincing his entire firm to pursue a deal based on false pretenses? I stood, moving around my desk. I didn't set Derek up. I scheduled a legitimate business meeting that was on our calendar for 2 weeks. I evaluated a proposal my team had already flagged as problematic. The only person who set Derek up was Derek. But you knew. You knew he'd be there, and you didn't warn him. Why would I? He claimed to be working on a major deal with TechVision Solutions. If that were true, he'd have done basic research. He'd have known who the CEO was. That's not my responsibility. She sank into the chair, the fight draining out of her. He's going to lose his apartment. His car lease is up next month. He has student loans. Then he should have been better at his job, I said, not unkindly. Look, I understand you care about him. But his problems didn't start this morning. They started when he decided lying and arrogance were acceptable business strategies. He really loved me, she said softly. Did he? Or did he love what you represented? The right girlfriend with the right family connections. I sat on the edge of my desk. You deserve someone who doesn't need to put others down to feel big. Someone whose success is real, not performed. Someone who treats my wife's family, your family, with actual respect. She was crying now, quiet tears that broke my heart despite everything. I thought he was the one. I know. I'm sorry. Mom and Dad loved him. Mom and Dad loved his performance. They didn't know him any better than you did. She wiped her eyes. Your wife told me to ask you something. About why you don't talk about your job. What about it? She said you could buy and sell Derek's entire company, but you drive a Toyota and shop at regular stores and never mention what you do. Why? I thought about how to explain it. When I started this company, I was 26 and broke. I worked 16-hour days, slept in my office, ate ramen for dinner. I did that because I believed in what we were building, not because I wanted to get rich. The money came later, and it's wonderful, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But it's not who I am. It's just something I have. But Derek needs people to know. Derek needs external validation because he doesn't have internal worth. I don't need anyone at a family dinner to know my bank balance or my title because I'm secure in what I've built. Does that make sense? She nodded slowly. Your wife is lucky. I'm lucky. She could have married someone who needed to prove something all the time. Instead, she got me. I smiled. And you'll find someone like that too. Someone real. Can I ask you something else? Would you have helped him? If he'd been kind at dinner, if he'd been genuine, would you have considered the deal? Honestly, no. The deal was bad regardless. But I would have let him down gently. Given him feedback he could use. Maybe introduced him to other contacts. I shrugged. Kindness opens doors. Arrogance slams them shut. She stood to leave, then paused. I'm sorry. For how he talked to you. For laughing. I should have said something. You didn't know any better. Now you do. After she left, I called my wife again. She came by. I know. She just texted me. Said you were actually pretty wise for a tech geek. I laughed. High praise. Are you okay? This whole thing has been a lot. I'm fine. Tired of drama, but fine. Good. Because I'm making your favorite dinner, and I'm buying the expensive wine, and we're celebrating the fact that my husband is both successful and kind, which is apparently a rare combination. I love you. I know. Now come home. 3 weeks later, I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant buzzed. You have a visitor. No appointment. Says his name is Derek and it's personal. I considered turning him away. The chapter was closed, the lesson learned. But curiosity won. Send him in. He looked different. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by khakis and a button-down. No Rolex, no designer shoes. He looked younger somehow, and significantly more humble. I wasn't sure you'd see me, he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. I almost didn't. Sit down. He sat, hands folded in his lap. I've been working on an apology for 3 weeks. Practiced it probably 100 times. But now that I'm here, it all sounds inadequate. Try anyway. I'm sorry. Not just for dinner, though that was awful. I'm sorry for assuming, for performing, for treating people like stepping stones. He met my eyes. I'm sorry for not being who I pretended to be. What happened after the meeting? Paramount fired me that afternoon. My apartment lease was up anyway, so I moved back in with my parents in Ohio. Been doing some substitute teaching. My degree was in education before I decided business was more prestigious. He laughed bitterly. Prestige. What a joke. And your relationship? Over. Obviously. Your sister-in-law was kind about it, which somehow made it worse. She deserved better than my act. He shifted in his seat. I've been in therapy. Turns out I have some issues with self-worth and external validation. Most people do, I said. The difference is most people don't build their entire personality around compensating for it. Fair. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote you a letter too. Everything I've learned, everything I'm working on. But sitting here now, it seems performative. Another act. So skip the letter. Tell me why you're really here. He was quiet for a long moment. Because I ruined my life trying to impress people who didn't matter, and I hurt people who did. Because you could have destroyed me completely, told everyone, made it public, whatever, and you didn't. Because I need to understand how someone builds what you built without becoming what I became. Now we were getting somewhere. You want the secret. If there is one. I leaned back in my chair. There is. Ready. Care about the work more than the image. Care about the people more than the profit. Build something real instead of performing something impressive. I paused. And here's the hard part. Accept that most people will never know. Most people won't see your struggles or your victories. Most people will underestimate you. And you have to be okay with that. But you have 3,000 employees. $500 million in revenue. You could. Could what? Post about it on social media? Wear expensive suits to family dinners? Drop my job title into every conversation? I shook my head. That's not success. That's insecurity with a bigger budget. Derek absorbed this. So that dinner, when I was going on and on, I was watching someone perform their life instead of living it. And I felt bad for you, honestly. All that energy spent on impression management, none of it spent on actual growth. Do you think? He hesitated. Do you think people can change? Really change, not just modify their performance? I think people can grow if they're willing to do the work. Real work, not just reading self-help books or watching TED Talks. The uncomfortable work of examining why you need external validation. Why you measure worth in job titles and watch brands. Why you think putting others down elevates you. That's what therapy is for, I guess. That's what living is for. Therapy helps, but ultimately you have to choose who you want to be. Every day, every interaction, every decision. He nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? When I made those comments at dinner, you just sat there. Why didn't you destroy me right then? Because that's not who I am. I don't need to prove myself to someone I just met. And honestly, I thought maybe you'd realize your mistake before the meeting. Do some basic research, connect the dots, show up prepared. That would have been the professional thing to do. But I didn't. No, you didn't. You were so confident in your assumptions that you never questioned them. That's the real lesson here. Arrogance makes you stupid. It blinds you to reality. Derek stood. Thank you. For seeing me, for being honest. For not having security throw me out. Where are you going from here? Back to Ohio. I'm actually enjoying teaching. 9th grade English. The pay is terrible, and nobody's impressed by it. But the work matters. Kids need good teachers. They do, I agreed. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, that's more valuable than any consulting deal. He moved toward the door, then turned back. Your sister-in-law is dating someone new. A high school coach. Apparently he's kind and funny and genuine. Good for her. She told me once that she finally understands what real success looks like. That it's not about the performance. She's a smart woman. I hope she's happy. After he left, I sat for a while, thinking about ambition and humility, performance and authenticity. My phone buzzed. My wife, asking what I wanted for dinner. Whatever you want, I texted back. I'm just happy to be home. That evening, at another family dinner, smaller this time, just us and her parents, my father-in-law asked about work. Busy, I said. Good busy, though. We're expanding into 3 new markets next quarter. That's wonderful, son, he replied, and I could tell he meant it even though he still didn't really understand what I did. But that was okay. I didn't need him to understand. I didn't need anyone to understand except the people who mattered. My wife, my team, myself. My mother-in-law brought out dessert, and conversation shifted to lighter topics. No one performed. No one postured. Just family, together, being real with each other. Later, driving home, my wife took my hand. Penny for your thoughts. Just thinking about Derek showing up today. How'd that go? Better than expected. I think he's actually doing the work, becoming someone real instead of someone impressive. Good for him. She squeezed my hand. You know what I love most about you? My devastating good looks and charm. She laughed. Besides that, I love that you've never needed to be the loudest voice in the room. You just quietly build things, help people, live your life. No performance, no pretense. Just you. Just me, I agreed. And apparently that's enough. More than enough, she said. It's everything. We drove home in comfortable silence, and I thought about success and worth and the difference between impressing people and actually connecting with them. I thought about Derek, starting over in Ohio, hopefully learning to build a real life instead of a performance. I thought about my sister-in-law, dating someone genuine, finally understanding what mattered. But mostly I thought about the quiet satisfaction of work done well, relationships built on truth, and a life lived authentically. No audience required. No validation needed. Just the steady, unglamorous work of being a good person, building good things, treating people well. That was the real secret. Not performance. Not prestige. Just genuine effort, genuine care, genuine growth. And in the end, that was worth more than all the Rolexes in the world.